Hello everyone, I'm Nikos and welcome to another Sound from the Apartment episode. This is the final and lengthiest episode about the AXR4 series, a product review we've done. As you know, I'm a great fan of Steinberg and I couldn't miss an opportunity to review this interface that I've got in my hands. So this is the last episode. It has everything you need to know about the panel of the AXR4, which is called DSPMIXFX, and we're going to go through all of its settings. So without delaying this any further, let's dive into the actual video. So now we're going to go further into the AXR4 panel and we're going to discuss pretty much about its full functionality. We'll move away from just one channel strip. Let's start with the easy stuff. Let's go through the graphics and then we'll move on to the menu. First things first, what I wanted to show you earlier is that obviously you've got your name up here. I didn't mention that was the name. However, you can also rename this. So if you double click that, you can say this is my, I don't know, vocals for example. Boom, I've got a name there now. If I want to link these two channels, I can right click onto this and say, you know, channel 1 and 2, please link them into a pair. And now this, as you can see, it's a stereo pair, which has some kind of input on channel 2 because that's the DI output of my Kemper. So I will unlink them now. And here you go. So here these are now two separate channels. Now if I move further down, next to the faders to the left, you've got these three buttons here: analog, digital and DAW. Essentially what these do is they hide or unhide the desired inputs. So if for example I just only wanted to see my analog inputs on the interface, I could hide these two. Or if I just wanted my digital inputs, for example, which is my microphone coming into the ADAT input, I could just see it there. If I want to see my DAW inputs, here you go, here you have them. And if you want to see all the inputs on my interface, boom, here we go. We've got everything lined up here. So this is like the full input list. And as you can see, they are color coded as well. So if I go back now into the beginning, you can see I've got my inputs, obviously 1, 2, 3 and 4. So these are two inputs, the Kemper ones. We don't need them actually linked anymore, so I will unlink them so it's more clear that this is like 3 and 4. And as we discussed earlier, the 3 and 4 inputs are not high Z, so this option is missing from here. Now moving further to inputs 5 to 12, you can see these are line inputs. Obviously these are the 8-line inputs, the TRS balanced inputs we've got at the back of the interface we discussed earlier. And as you can see, obviously because we're not having a preamp on them, the input section is different than the preamps. So you've got a pad and then you've got some headroom options as well. So we've got 20 dBs of headroom here and 14 dBs of headroom here. Then you've got the -10 on the pad, and then you've got the low cut or high pass, whatever you want to say, filter, and then your phase as well as you had on your preamps. Obviously the silk emulation module is missing, and that is because it's a line input. It doesn't have a preamp, so you can't have it, sorry. Moving further down, again the insert section is the same. You can put any kind of effects you want here, and you can record them as well if you want to. You've got your send to your effects, and then obviously you've got your pan, your mute, solo, and your fader level, as well as your routing. So pretty much the line input is pretty much the same, as well as the preamps, with the difference obviously that the silk emulation is missing and the input section doesn't contain the gain and the options your preamp will have. Moving further to the digital inputs from the ADAT, you cannot have any control over the input section on them, and that's obviously because these are controlled externally by whatever device is giving the ADAT input to your interface, so you can control them directly from that interface. Okay, so now moving away from the input section, we will move to the output section, and the output section is over here to the right, and you've got your outputs, and that includes the analog outputs and the digital outputs. And again, I've got these two buttons here, and I can just swap between the digital or the analog or both. There's no input section apparently for the outputs, because they're outputs, so there's no need for that. There's no silk emulation, obviously, because we don't need that. And then you've got the insert section. Over here you can again add effects, and these effects are the same as we had before, the channel, so the compressor or the EQ, and these will affect the output signal. So if you've got like, I don't know, a very specific mix of like, let's say 8 channels on your inputs, and you're routing them through 1 and 2, and you put a compressor, all these signals going into that output will be compressed, okay? That's very handy as well if you want to put an EQ on your speakers, or for any reason you want to put some DSP on them. Here you go, you can put it straight in. The loopback button that you can see here, that allows the AXR to send one of these outputs to Windows or to your operating system if you are on Mac, I don't know, for recording. So for example, the loopback here is enabled for me because I'm sending this loopback to OBS, so I can record my vocals and DAW output straight into a stereo channel, straight into OBS, okay? Then you've got the return knob, which essentially it's the volume of the return from the effect. So wherever you're sending from the inputs to the effects section here, the master effect section, it returns onto this volume knob. So this essentially controls the volume of the reverb on that bus, okay? Then you've got your pan section, and then you've got your mute button, your volume, then you've got your headphone patches. So if I wanted to replicate this specific mix that goes into line 1 and 2 on the headphone pair 1 or headphone pair 2, I can just select these buttons. If I want both headphones, I can again click both buttons, and then both headphone outputs will replicate whatever mix is going to this bus. But obviously I can do that for the rest of the outputs as well if I want to. Now moving further from the output section, you've got the main section for the reverb. As you know already, we've got reverbs on the AXR4. We can select between whole, roux and plate, and if I click the E button, which stands for edit, I can load the whole effects, reverb or whatever. I can load presets, I can change the settings, can do loads of stuff really. And like I said, these effects sound fantastic, and they're great help for tracking singers, especially if you want to listen to reverb on their headphones. So that pretty much sums it up for whatever we can see and it's visible on our panel. So I'll go through the menu options now, and I'll explain what you can find hiding behind this panel. Right, so going to the panel menus now, we've got File, Edit, Window, Scene, Help, and Device. Device is not clickable, but I'm assuming that if you had 3 AXR4s linked together, you would probably be able to jump in between them from this kind of menu. Probably it will be some kind of drop down menu saying AXR unit 1, 2, 3, and then you could probably swap between them from this specific like portion of the menu. So let's start with File. This is very self-explanatory. This is very easy to understand. So File, what it does, it pretty much saves the whole panel, the whole mixer of AXR as a preset. You can open a preset if you want to with your settings, or you can save your current one, or if you don't want to override your current one, you can save it as save as, and then you can create a duplicate version of it really, and you know, at the same time keeping the one you had before for whatever reason you want to do that. And then obviously with open you can recall whatever you've saved, or if someone gives you their settings and you want to use them in your studio for any reason why, or they might have their effects like loaded up and with specific settings, here you go, you've got the open option. So someone hands over the scene to you, open it, boom, it's in your mixer, done. Now moving to the next menu, we've got edit, and essentially edit is a bit of a global thing. So disable insert effects. Now if for any reason I wanted to reset all the inserts in my panel on my mixer, this is how I do it. So for example, I'll show you now. If I load like a channel strip here and a channel strip here and a compressor, sorry, and a EQ here and a compressor here and another channel strip here, and I didn't want to go through each one of them to remove them out, I would simply go into edit, hit disable effects. It asks me if I want to continue, because obviously this is going to reset everything on the insert section here on the mixer. So if I hit OK, boom, as you can see, all the effects are gone. Then moving to the next option, we've got show hidden channels. This is again very self-explanatory. So for example, if I hide all my input channels and I click on that, boom, it asks me again to confirm, everything's back. Third one is pairing and mono and stereo. So essentially, if you click that, it will globally pair all the inputs and outputs on the AXR. If you put it into mono, it will separate them again and everything will be one separated bus. Again, that's a global setting, so it will affect all buses, all inputs. It doesn't matter if they're on stereo or mono. Everything will become mono, everything will become stereo once you click one of these. And then you've got the last one, which is set default. And this is about routing and channel names. I'm not going to click them. So the channel names option is going to reset everything that is named up here. So if I click it, vocals will revert back into mic 1, which is the default naming for the AXR4 panel. If I click on the routing under the set default option, this is going to actually reset all the levels on every kind of mix I want. And I'm not doing that because I'm recording my microphone now, so I don't want to ruin this setting, because it will take me some time and disrupt my train of thought and everything if I do this now. So I'll ignore it for now, okay? So moving to the next menu now, we'll go under the window one. This is an interesting one. We're going to discuss about this for quite some time actually. So take a deep breath and follow me on this one. Meter. This is quite easy to understand what it does. It shows you a meter reads of every input and output you've got on the AXR4. Again, you've got the option to hide whatever you don't want to see, right? And that comes from inputs and outputs as well. So this right now doesn't have much functionality because it defeats its purpose, but it's there. But anyway, so yeah, here we go. We've got all these back up and running now, and I will close this as I don't want it to be in front of me. And then we've got the matrix mixer. Matrix mixer. So this is a very, very easy way to see what I'm sending at which level and where. So I can see very, very easily where my hardware inputs are actually routed to which outputs over here. Yeah. And then you can also see you know, the DAW outputs where they're routed as well. So this is a bit untidy at the moment, not sure why it's like that, but I'll probably reset it after the tutorial and I'll probably make a scene, which I should have done if I'm honest with you, but I haven't. Only because I'm a very lazy person sometimes. I focus on other things and I neglect, you know, the small ones. But sometimes these small ones are the ones that actually help us with our workflow. So I need to work a bit more on that. Anyway, that's a personal note. You don't care about it. Show hide channels. So that is another panel for showing and hiding panels. So Steinberg has a very, very, very big interest in make this panel as much as flexible as possible. So now, instead of hiding channels as a group, like all the analog or all the digital ones, I can select which channels I want to be hidden individually. So if I wanted, for example, just, you know, line 5 and 6 to be hidden from the analog section, so these two here, I can just unselected, and then you can see they're gone. So I've got mic 3, 4, then I'll go straight into 7 and 8 because these two are hidden. So I can tailor this to the preference I want, up to even a signal channel really. So if I didn't want any of these channels to be there, only because I'm not doing anything super specific with them, or I don't want my session to be that big on the panel because I don't want to scroll in between the pages, that's a way to do it from this panel. And I can do the same with the outputs as well, which is very, very interesting, because I can then only have the outputs I'm interested in showing on my screen and keep everything tidy, like we discussed on the tutorial previously on the series How to Become a Better Sound Engineer. Because tidy is not only for hardware and cables, right? It's in our softwares as well, plugins, folders, projects. I'll make a separate episode, I think, about this one. But anyway, let's move further now. Now, the biggest and more probably complicated window is this one here. It's called Settings. And if I click on that, it will take us in a window where we've got more settings to discuss about. Boom. I know it doesn't look like very intimidating right now, but you'll get what I mean in a second, right? So let's start from the left column. As you can see, we've got the interface section here, and it can tell you if you've got a Thunderbolt or a USB interface. As we said before, AXR4T is a Thunderbolt version of interface, and AXR4U is a USB version of the interface. Now you've got this control panel as well, a button which, if you click it, it will get you into the control panel of the interface. AXR4, that's the tab up here, it will give you the sample rate you're using right now to record, and also allow you to record in between these different sample rates. Now, the interesting thing is that if you're using Cubase, you can only use up to 192 kilohertz. And if you're using Nuendo, then you can go up to 384 kilohertz. So that's a very interesting choice, but I think that's made only because Nuendo is supposed to be more high-end, most for post-production, and that's where you're going to need the full power of this interface. Still, 190 kilohertz is too much already. Then you've got your clock source, which can be internal from your computer or from word clock, from a source from there, or it could be clocked directly from an ADAT device that's coming into your A or B optical section at the back of the interface. Then if you move into ASIO, you've got the option to change your buffer size, and then you've got your DMA buffer size as well, which is very, very impressive to use, and I would suggest obviously you keep it as low as possible. And then you've got the MMCSS mode as well. I don't need to use it, it's supposed to make things better when you're recording. I don't need it really, I haven't noticed a major difference with my system, so I haven't selected it really. It's supposed to be making things better, but again, depends on your system, so sometimes it might cause trouble rather than fix it or make things better. So use at your own risk. If you don't want your computer to explode, just don't take it. And then you've got the third tab, which is about, and it just pretty much tells you what the version of the Thunderbolt driver is, and obviously the copyright of the driver, which is the Yamaha Corporation. Okay, so I'll click OK on that and close it. Now, moving further down to the left column, we've got the knob mouse control, and it can be either linear or circular. Now, this is like a very, very weird setting to have, because obviously it comes down to how you're used to using equipment. So I would say the circular mode is mostly for people who are used into analog equipment. So what it means is that when you're adjusting a knob, so for example, let's say the insert knob here, the circular mode, you will have to actually use the mouse in a circular way if you want to adjust the knob, like you would do if you're physically touching the knob. The linear option allows you to just move the mouse up and down, and then that will circularly change the knob instead. Personally, I'll go with the linear. I'm more of a digital guy. I don't mind actually going, circular if I want to change the knob. It just puts me off a bit, I think, I'd say. So I just prefer the linear mode, up and down. It's best for me. So next option on this column is the conversion mode. Now, what the conversion mode does, and actually has two options, which is linear phase and short delay. So conversion mode practically is a filter that affects your converters, the ones that obviously are onto the AXR4 interface. Now, normally, if you didn't have this option here, you wouldn't be able to change that setting. And if you wouldn't be able to change that setting, you would probably have some linear phase conversion there for, being fixed, not being able to change it. But Steinberg here gives us the option to choose between the linear phase and the short delay ones. In the manual, it just says that they've got some sonic differences. Now, what the sonic differences are, I'm going to explain to you in just a second, right? My only caveat here is that the short delay one, that's an interesting one because we don't know how short that delay is. These filters usually have different kind of categories. So you might have like a super short delay, a slow short delay, a fast short delay. So it doesn't clarify exactly how short it is, but given it gives you just two options, you've got short and pretty much linear, which is no delay at all. So it's between these two. Now what happens is the linear phase conversion mode pretty much takes advantage of the full frequency spectrum, and essentially it captures as much information on the frequency spectrum it can. So it will give you the richest possible recording it can, as transparent as possible. So what the short delay does is it introduces a roll-off filter on the higher end of the frequency spectrum. And because of that, it gets rid a bit of these harsh high frequencies you might record and might make the sound more digital, if that makes sense. If you know the harshness wars the analog versus the digital guys have. So essentially, by doing that, short delay makes the sound a bit more analog, warm, let's say, natural maybe. If you think about it, if you go back into the articles we made about the microphones, go back into the ribbon microphones, which by their nature, they're not that bright, and that's why they've got this kind of natural sound and warm and, warm kind of texture. It's kind of a similar effect you got with this one, because you get rid of these harsh high frequencies. Personally, I prefer to use the linear phase conversion mode. It's just a personal preference. You can use the short delay one if you want to, but I'd go with the linear phase one. So that's that, and moving further down, we've got the pick hold, which is the last option in this column. And pick hold, what it does essentially is that if I click on it, you'll realize that my peaks never fall, never go back to where they were. If I untick that, you will see that they're moving again, and they're just a bit more temporary to their peak. That's it. That's under the general settings, and now we're moving into the AXR4 settings column. And now here you've got first of all, two digital sections, which is digital A and digital B, and obviously these refer to the two optical sections we have at the back of the interface. So the first one is the ADAT1, and we can select if we want the ADAT inputs to carry ADAT or SPDIF signal. In my case, I want ADAT, and I'm not going to change this because it's going to mess with my recording vector at the back of the AXR4. Then we've got the high pass filter section. It gives us intervals of 20 Hz, starting from 40, 60, 80, 100, and 120. And this actually is going to affect all the high pass filters across the interface. So if I set this to 40 Hz, all the low pass filters on every input are going to cut down from 40 Hz and below. If I change that back to 80, then again, all the filters in the inputs of AXR4 are going to cut down from 80 Hz and below. So essentially, it's a very nice, neat global setting to have, because most of these high pass filters are a fixed frequency, you cannot change it. This one you can change digitally, again, really, really nice. Next one, post fader send for reverb. Pretty much it just gives you an option to select which output is going to send the post fader signal to the reverb, to the effects machine, and that's it really. And then you've got the routing mode, which gives you the matrix routing. Now, what the matrix routing does is it allows you to pretty much route these channels, these inputs, individually or in mixes. So right now, if I wanted, let's say, to have channels 3 and 4 send it into 5 and 6, as you can see, I can just do this. And now if I want these channels to go into, I don't know, let's say 1 and 2, you can see that actually they're going there already. But as you can see, when I changed this to select channel 3, it changed the whole row. So whatever changes I'm making here, it affects the whole strip of channels. So if I go back into my window and tick this, now if you notice, all the channels I can control individually. So if I wanted to send channel 4 to mix 5 and 6, it doesn't affect the rest of them. So this way I can affect specific channels with specific mixes. So for example, if I wanted channels 1 and 2 only sent to 1 and 2, here we go. If I want these channels to only be sent to channel 3 and channel 4, here we go, we've got them there. And this way I'm saving myself time from going back and forth in between the bus mixes, which I can do with the other setting by unticking this box. Very convenient as well if I want specific channels to go to specific mixes, or if I just want to swap between one channel and have the rest of the channels on a specific mix, and that's it. So here you go, very, very convenient, very, very easy to route channels if you're using the mixer quite a lot, which probably you will, especially if you're working on large projects. Finally, you've got your output routing here, and essentially what you can do is you can change your outputs and you can make them wherever you want, and you know, that gives you extra flexibility and functionality. So again, very well done, Steinberg. This is an incredible piece of work and can save us loads of time if we want to do silly things with our outputs really. So yeah, well done, very, very nice. I'm going away from this window now because I got tired. Okay, the scene menu. So this is the menu I need to work on more. So just because, like I said before, I'm quite lazy sometimes. So essentially here you can create different scenes of the actual mixer. So all these data here, these are going to be saved in one file if you save this from this menu here, from the file menu, okay? So you can save up to 8 scenes and you can, you know, switch between them however you want. So for example, I could have a scene from my recording which I'm doing now, and it will be like, you know, using the microphone to the ADAT input that goes into the Mod 2 and then into the AXR, and I could get rid of these channels because I don't need them right now to be visible here. All that I could actually have them saved here. And also if I want to put some effects or compressors or EQs or whatever on my voice or in the bass or anything, or have the same gain settings or loopback settings or whatever, I can all of them save into one of these scenes, okay? And then if I want a different setting or whatever, I could pretty much save it on a different kind of scene and recall it whenever I want it, very, very easily and, you know, painless really. It's a very, very quick way to walk through mixer settings. So yeah, remind me to do this, okay? That's on you if I forget, by the way. Right, okay, so moving to the last entry on the menu, we've got help. And help gives us two options here, help and about. Now, if I click on help, what more obvious than the operation manual? Like we used to say, read the F manual. You know what F stands for, right? Okay, so that's that. And if we click on about, we can see pretty much this little window here, which shows us the firmware of the AXR4, version 1.1 on mine, and then you can also see the firmware version of the AXR ICT interface card at the back of it, which is version 0.54. That means that this card, this interface, this module at the back has its own kind of firmware on it. It's a different version as well from the actual firmware of the audio interface, which means, or gives us another clue, that it's possibly removable as well. So that's an extra indicator of that suspicion. And then you've got the version of the DSPMIXFX for AXR, which essentially is a version of the tools and the mixer you've got to run the AXR. Now, a very quick note on this: if you've got your firmware and your DSPMIXFX on different versions and they're not both at the latest one, your AXR4 might not be recognized by your computer or the AXR4 tools. So make sure you've got the latest version for both of them from the Steinberg website at all times. That way it will work for you flawlessly. And that pretty much wraps up everything about the panel. Alright, so that's everything about the AXR4T, the Thunderbolt version of Steinberg's flagship audio interface. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found this insightful and useful about the Neve Silk emulation. The preamps on this device can record up to 384 kilohertz and 32 bits as well, and has like loads of inputs, analog and digital, and loads of outputs again, digital and analog, and everything you might want to want on an interface. I love it. It's very easy to expand. You know, that's a very crucial factor when you're picking an audio interface, how easily you can use it to expand your studio capabilities, not having like optical outputs and stuff like that. So things like that matter on an interface, and this one has like everything on top of it. SPDIF, it has IAS CPU, it has ADAT, it's got MIDI, it's got overclock, it's got loads of stuff you can use on it. It's got pretty much everything, so it's very nice, very neat. It has 4 very clear transparent mic preamps as well, the Yamaha hybrid ones. Really good, I love them already. And obviously you've got this kind of functionality on panel and integration with Cubase, and obviously, as I said before, again, the Rupert Neve Silk emulation, red and blue textures. Okay, so really nice piece of equipment from Steinberg. Really great job, and I don't know, guys, I mean, this is an interface for me that it deserves its money, and it can do really cool stuff. I'm pretty sure it will enhance your capabilities, your skills, just by fiddling with it and understanding its potential, as well as bringing some extra quality into your studio, if it's a home studio or an actual studio. So once again, thank you for being around. Follow me on Patreon or donate, or if you can't donate, share the Patreon page so someone else might be able to donate. See, clever thinking. Follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. Of course, visit our website, read our articles, because we're also writing articles about sound engineering. You can learn a load of things, and we're always trying to, write about new ideas and everything. So if you've got any ideas, put them in the comments. As well, put how helpful this review of AXR4 was in the comments, and let's discuss about the capabilities this interface can have. Until next time, next video, stay safe and stay creative above everything else. See you soon.